Notice familiar? Did you know that the most played melody in human history wasn't written by a pop star, but from the grave by a dead guy from the 1800s? And you've heard it probably thousands of times. On buses, in classrooms, at family dinners in the middle of the night. A melody that its peak was heard 1.8 billion times a day. That's over 20,000 times every second. But behind those digital beeps lies a hidden classical masterpiece called Gran Vals. Most of us know it as a Nokia Tune, a digital beep that defined a generation. But what if I told you this wasn't a tech invention? What if I told you that world's most famous ringtone was a stolen fragment of a 19th century masterpiece, chosen specifically because the man who wrote it was dead? To understand the ringtone, we have to understand the man behind it, Francisco Tárrega. In the world of classical guitar, he is a legend, often called the father of modern guitar technique. But his life wasn't easy. As a child, he nearly lost his eyesight after falling into a irrigation channel. His father, fearing he might go blind and never be able to work, pushed him toward music so he could survive as a musician. And that decision changed history. In 1902, 7 years before his death, Tárrega composed a beautiful guitar waltz called Gran Vals. Elegant, romantic, intimate, and hidden inside that piece, just a few seconds long, was a short melodic phrase. In Tárrega's words, this was just a light, playful transition. He had no idea that these 3 seconds would eventually eclipse the rest of his life's work. Fast forward to the early 1990s. Mobile phones were exploding in popularity, and the Finnish company called Nokia was leading the revolution. But they had a problem: sound. Early phones sounded harsh, metallic. Nokia wanted something different, a brand sound, something human, recognizable, warm. So, in 1993, their team began listening to hundreds of musical pieces, searching for a melody that could work within the limited technology of early phones. Because back then, phones could only play one note at a time. No charts, no harmony, just monophonic beeps. But there was another problem: money. If Nokia used music by a living artist, say Michael Jackson or Queen, they would have to pay millions royalties every year. For a company trying to put a phone in every pocket, that was impossible. Then they found the loophole. Let's do the math. Tárrega died in 1909, plus 70 years equals 1979. Bingo! By 1992, Tárrega's music was public property. No royalties, no licensing fees, no legal risk. It was high quality, it was beautiful, and most importantly, it was free. They found a century-old masterpiece and turned it into a corporate asset for the price of 0. And that's how Gran Vals became the Nokia Tune. But turning a classical guitar waltz into a ringtone wasn't simple. In 1993, mobile speakers were primitive. They couldn't play chords or capture the soul of a Spanish guitar. They could only play one note at one time. Engineers had to strip the music down to its skeleton. They translated emotion into mathematics. They chose frequencies that could cut through city noise, traffic, and crowded rooms. That's why the early Nokia tune sounds robotic. What we hear as a simple beep was actually a carefully engineered sound wave designed to be heard anywhere on Earth. The melody first appeared on the Nokia 2110 in 1994. It didn't even have a name. It was just called Type 7. But soon it was everywhere. Nokia phones spread across the planet. The melody became the most recognizable sound in modern life. It has been sampled by rappers, played by orchestras, parodied in concerts. A pianist even created a satire piece called Vals Irritation. Tárrega died in relative poverty, never knowing his music would travel the globe through radio waves. A man who nearly went blind created the most recognizable audio signal of the digital age. As Nokia grew to control 40% of the global market, the Tárrega melody became more than a sound. It became a psychological trigger. For the first time in history, a single piece of music was forced upon billions of people daily. Psychologists even began studying phantom vibration syndrome and ringtone anxiety. The Gran Vals was no longer a romantic waltz. For many, it became a symbol of work calling or interrupted moments. It's a fascinating case study. In 19th century, love song turned into a global notification alarm. Eventually, Nokia realized they couldn't rely on a dead guy forever if they wanted to stay cool. So they hired living legends. They hired Brian Eno, the man who created the Windows 95 startup sound, and Ryuichi Sakamoto. I don't know if I spell right, one of the greatest composers of modern cinema. They spent millions creating new tones. They even experimented with real songs as ringtone. But here is the twist. No matter how much they spent, they could never replace Tárrega. The Nokia Tune remained the DNA of the brand. Proof that sometimes the most powerful sound isn't invented, it's rediscovered. So next time you hear the classic Nokia ringtone in an old movie or a vintage shop, don't just think of a phone. Think of a Spanish composer in 1902 sitting with a guitar, writing a waltz for friends. Never imagine it would one day live inside billions of pockets. Francisco Tárrega never earned a cent from Nokia, but he achieved something far greater: immortality. He's quite literally the ghost in our machines. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden history of sound, subscribe for more untold music stories. And now I want to hear from you. What was your very first Nokia phone? And do you remember the first time you heard this ringtone?